Perfect.
Okay, sick. Okay, so we'll use both of our videos and audio. So I've got just my audio, you've got just your audio, right?
Yep. I have my high quality audio here, camera there, and we're good.
Okay, we're good. I'm gonna do a little awkward intro now. Okay, good morning. How's it going, dude? You good?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, ready. Hit me with some results, mate.
Okay, we're popping right into it. Okay, so.
Let's not mess around, mate.
Okay, so we have random tests from May 25th and June 21st so far, and your baseline results of March 28th that we have as a reference point as well for when we first started the testing window. So the first thing we go through is the urine. So this is where you kind of look at all of the different bioidentical compounds in terms of if there's an aberration. Is he doping with testosterone? Is he doing something that's going to manipulate something that's suppressing him? Is he going to have a manipulated testosterone to epitestosterone ratio? And here basically what you can see is an analysis of, well, he was also tested for HGH with the isoform differential immunoassay, and that cleared and it was fine, good to go on that. But the actual main thing most people are going to be thinking you would try and get away with on something like this would be manipulating your hormones with TRT or bioidentical, hard to detect compounds, because you literally are supposed to have them in your body. So that's where we look at this steroid profile data chart, and we can kind of see over time, not only is there aberrations in the ratios of these endogenous, which is naturally produced hormones that are supposed to be there, because if you were doping, you would have certain markers suppressed, namely epitestosterone, which at the top of that cholesterol cleavage chart I sent you a few minutes ago, you can see epitestosterone is higher up on the steroidogenesis chart than all of the other compounds that are being tested for here. That's because that is a metabolite that is not derived from testosterone. So where you have all those random ones like androsterone, adiocalanolone, 5-alpha-diol, 5-beta-diol, etc., a lot of those compounds are stemming from testosterone. So testosterone converts into 5-alpha-DHT, 5-alpha-diol, androsterone, as well as 5-beta-DHT, 5-beta-diol, adiocalanolone. But up at the top, right near cholesterol, you have this side cleaving into epitestosterone. So if you were doping, your testosterone levels, if you're using your test levels would stay wherever you had manually manipulated them to, but epitestosterone would be suppressed significantly. So that's where we see this epitestosterone going up in tandem with your testosterone is very, very, it's very obvious, or it seems pretty consistent that this is naturally in parallel. All of your hormones in unison are going up or down. So that means this is representative of what you would see from natural production of testosterone and other androgens in the body, is they're all going up and down in unison rather than one staying high or going high and one getting suppressed and then having a weird fucked up looking ratio. So everything here checks out as far as ratios. Your testosterone to epitestosterone ratio 1.1, 1.27, 0.98. Even if WADA was to assess this themselves, I don't think they would say, wow, that's a big enough aberration to then subsequently carbon isotope ratio test you to see if you're using a plant derived testosterone. Because if you were doping, you could ultimately figure out okay, the testosterone is being injected from a synthetic source rather than being naturally produced. But for you, not only is that not the case, but even if they were to test you further, we have blood tests to corroborate further reinforcing evidence that there's no suppression, which is why I feel they should add gonadotropins LH and FSH to blood tests and doping parameters, but they haven't yet. But that's kind of why this is the bulletproof testing that we're doing here. So
yeah.
So
and to emphasize, this is literally thorough as fuck, right? This is do you know what I mean? There's not realistically more we could do, right? Within reason.
No, other than higher frequency, but I mean ultimately it's random, yeah. So it's not there's really any leeway with that anyways. Obviously it's I don't know, obviously ideally you would take your blood every fucking day, but I mean that's not realistic at any level. But with the randomization, it puts it in a scenario where it's you have no idea when this is going to happen. So what's the probability you're going to risk your entire fucking social media image, your entire career on the fact that the organization testing you is not going to show up randomly, so you can get away with like a microdose of something, pretty low, or you'd have to be pretty ballsy. So for me,
psycho,
yeah, and the fact that we can see like your performance metrics too throughout this whole time, I think is pretty insightful, and goes like, not only are we going above and beyond with the blood work, but then another layer above that, like I'm pretty damn sure WADA is not asking you to max out on the bench every time they show up to your house. So, so that's what we're going to get into next too. And by the way, like you asked earlier about the androsterone levels, ediacalanolone levels, like why are they so much higher? Like they look like they skyrocketed. It's actually normal proportionally to your epitestosterone and testosterone. So again, that like chart I sent, like those are all metabolite compounds that will go up and down in unison in general with your testosterone levels segregated from your epitestosterone. So the fact that everything's like moving in unison and everything is within threshold levels, because again, you could hypothetically, this is a way people used to cheat back like decades ago, is they would literally administer epitestosterone to themselves, so then they could use testosterone and manually keep the ratio like 1-to-1. So they would inject like epitestosterone with their test and manually keep that T to E ratio on point. But we have a threshold ratio or a threshold value of epitestosterone too, where you are not crossing. So it's not representative of doping with EpiT to get away with like manually manipulating this. Like this is very tightly regulated, and it would be very hard for you to get around this. So I think this is natural as far as what we've looked at on the
CJ,
urine.
insert a big green tick at this point. Boom,
Yeah.
we're done. Number one, first check.
Okay, well, let's get into the blood before you get all fucking excited, but it does look. Anyway, so we have May 25th, June 21st, which are the random tests after March 28th. So you see a few things in red in general. These are representative. Nothing here is aberrant from like a synthetic like doping standpoint. Like it's not like your gonadotropins is the main thing we care about, and is why this blood test is one of the main reasons why this blood test is being used as like a concurrent, like reinforcing bulletproofed infrastructure for this whole testing parameter. So we can tell basically you have natural signal to your testes to produce testosterone. Like this is representative of natural function. If you're doping, these numbers would not only be probably suppressed or like literally subclinical, we would see like weird aberrations in them, but not, your test levels literally were almost identical in these two tests too. And notable, the reason that they went up so much, I think, is probably because you were literally in a state of like massive stress and just like not doing really anything conducive to testosterone production when you first started this testing window. Like you just got off surgery before that, right?
Yeah, so for context, the first test was like, I forget, but it was literally, I think it was days after a full Achilles rupture, so my body was pretty fucked at that point.
Yeah. So
surgery. No, it's post surgery. It was days post surgery. So I'd had the rupture. I'd had like major surgery. It was after that. Yeah. So obviously.
So obviously having like high quality rest, micro macronutrients, hard training, like these are all things that are like there are so many factors that go into testosterone production. So I'm not surprised to see that as you get healthier as an overall individual, your testosterone levels went up as you recovered, and then now they're kind of like static over time. But mainly, the main thing I care about is the fact that there's no suppression showing, because even if your test levels were normal and then they went up a bit or whatever, I would be looking for aberrations in the urine markers that we just looked at for if ratios are thrown off, which are not, and the FSH and LH levels are not all over the map either. They're totally natural looking, and there was no sign that you were doping with like fertility agents, like administering HCG to manually make yourself have like, testicular function or anything like that. The only thing people might be looking at that looks kind of weird is your liver function on the last test, ALT and AST being, so the thing I would ask is, did you lift, because these are random, people have to keep in mind too. So it's like you could have literally induced like significant amounts of muscle damage like right before a test or something. Like there's no kind of dictating when this happens, it's just random. So I don't know exactly what you did like the days before that, if you were drinking or
so that's the most recent one.
21st of June.
Yeah. So I drink like go out and drink probably once every 6 months. That was my brother's birthday, so I drunk like, by my standards, a lot. Like what, I don't know, 24 hours, like, I don't know, within a day and a half of that test. So that's going from basically never drinking to drinking, you know, a shit ton by my standards within, a day or so. So I'm assuming, I mean, I'm hoping it's that. I'm not got some fucking liver disease, but the fact that the other ones were good, that means that would be a pretty big coincidence if it wasn't that, right?
Yeah, like these liver enzyme markers can fluctuate significantly in short periods of time. So I wouldn't be surprised if on the next test, they're totally normal looking. And it's like naturals, people who are, you know, there's so many things that could account for liver function, elevations in liver enzymes, but your GGT's in check, bilirubin, ALP, everything looks normal. This is just like a transient stress, in my opinion. The rest of it on the same blood test, your HDL looks natural. FSH and LH are literally like the best they've been as far as natural function. SHBG is also the highest it's been, which would be like very hard to get up higher if you were doping. And testosterone the highest it's been. So like nothing in here looks unnatural to me whatsoever. So also checked out on the blood test, which is notably something they won't even do in the Olympics or USADA or anything of this nature at the UFC. They're not going to take your blood and assess your, literally like manually interpret your HDL and see like, oh, does it look like a steroid user? Oh, is your ALT and AST elevated chronically from oral steroids and having concurrent suppression, your FSH and LH? Like, what is going on? No one's looking at this shit. So this is kind of like why I even felt this was worth doing, is because you were willing to go like full board and like do the full gamut of stuff that you really can't get around this, to be honest. Like, it would be insanely like psychopathic level territory for getting around this shit. So anyway, so I guess that brings us to the lifts. So again, something that they're not going to do in Olympics is make you, deadlift max, squat max, bench max consistently throughout like the testing window. So going over the bench press numbers, like I've seen the lifts as far back as your PR all-time life PR 185 kilogram bench of February 2021, and you got a squat all-time PR 275 kg February of 2021 as well, and then your deadlift all-time PR was 310 kilograms as of March of last year. So like what we would want to see in general is that as Matt, like obviously he's coming off an injury, so like it's pretty expected that at the start of this testing window where he's coming off of like a brutal Achilles tendon rupture was the injury, right? Yeah, like coming off of that, obviously his squat is going to be, and deadlift and like anything training related when you're like completely sidelined is going to be lower. But the thing that would be indicative of doping is if he is not able to recover back to these levels after we subject him to random drug testing. So again, like if you're being subjected to random drug testing and all of a sudden now it's impossible for you to get your lifts back up to where they used to be when you were not being drug tested, like it's like, why can't you? Like what's going on that is not allowing your performance to get to where it used to be? So what we would like to see.
So that like pertains to, so this is two strands, right? The first strand is showing that I'm natural now, right? Over the last few months. And like, I feel like we're showing that and we'll continue to show that. The next strand with the lifts is more showing I've always been natural, right? Or for at least, a very, very long time. Because if my lifts, like I said, once I get my lifts back to those numbers and I'm passing tests, there's no way I was taking drugs before and I've come off and then have somehow, that's not possible, right? That's the point of like the...
Yeah. So like for me personally, and by the way, one thing I should mention too that I forgot to about the urine analysis is that covers the entire WADA prohibited list of 2022. So that's from S0 all the way down to like beta blockers. Like this is like the entire banned substance list. So this is like A to Z, any synthetic agent you could be using. So it's pretty comprehensive, as we've already outlined, but I just wanted to put that in there just in case I forgot to mention it, because I think I did. But anyways, the actual performance metrics. Yeah. So like if I was thinking of testing a guy bulletproof throughout an entire 6 to 12 months, and his performance and physique as well was contingent upon drugs in order to sustain it, which it would be presumably if you were, a fitness industry guy who has been like beating numbers for however many years and like achieving a physique that, people aspire to be, and you're dependent on drugs to achieve these things. Obviously, if you're then being subject to drug testing, not only would these either dwindle if they were at their peak and then you're pulled off of drugs to get around the testing, or you would never get back to the same place to begin with. So it's like, for you, if over the next, however many months, we're still drug testing you with this bulletproof full spectrum testing, and you manage to get not only like your physique is like pretty fucking similar from what I've seen, but like your lifts all get back up to exactly where they were before, or like within like reasonable striking distance naturally, I would say it's pretty impossible to say that it would be pretty hard to assert that anything about your physique was contingent upon drug use to get it. So like obviously somebody could say, oh, maybe you tried a pro hormone when you were like fucking 19 years old or something, like, but ultimately it's not like the sustaining of that into like your 30s or something, and then being subject to testing in your late 30s when you're supposed to be declining too in performance. Like, there are so many supporting factors that would be very impossible to say that anything that you've gotten to these peak numbers in your almost late 30s at this point now could have been derived from PED use, in my opinion. Like, it's pretty hard to tie anything to that. So I would say like the likelihood is very high that there's potential to be a lifetime natural there. I'm not saying it's impossible, but ultimately, like, you can't really assert that anything was significantly supportive from like, many years ago to what you have now, because otherwise you would not be able to achieve it while being drug tested this scrupulously. So yeah, like I would personally go out and be like, yeah, he's probably lifetime natural, personally. But pending we see you get
probably.
there. Right?
Probably, mate. What was the probably? Come on.
Well, yeah, obviously, like at the end of the day, it's kind of, I don't know. Yeah. But like that overall, I think the conclusion of probably, and nothing is supportive of the physique now from the past, it's like, has somebody taken a sniff of cocaine one time? Oh, well, you're no longer like a recreational, like drug-free guy for the rest of your life. But it's not like you're currently getting something from that necessarily. Some people might assert that there's like bank of myonuclei in your muscle from using, maybe you took shit tons of drugs when you're like 20 years old, and then you have some like permanent level of enhancement above that. But it's like, especially with strength numbers, they're so like neurologically driven. Like there's so much like psychoactive like drive associated with like pushing fucking big numbers in max reps or max bench attempts, max deadlift, max squat, that it's hard to really like say that the PEDs from like 20 fucking years or 10, 15, whatever, however many years ago, dragged into your late 30s and gave you benefits now from a strength aspect and a physique aspect. Like, you could essentially rule it out. Again, like that's as good as you're gonna get, where I think 99.9% of people are gonna realize like, okay, it's probably fucking lifetime natural. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, realistically, that's good enough for me. That's as good as I'm going to get in it.
Yeah, and that's like from me, if you're looking for like a check, I wish there was a way I could give like a Natty check mark or some shit, but like, yeah.
Instagram bio, that would be sick.
Yeah. So anyways, that is, obviously I'm watching the lifts closely, and, I'm just, are you going to get there? To be determined, but, we'll keep testing you, and hopefully you get there, bro.
Appreciate it, dude.
Give some hope to the natties out there, bro.
That's the goal.